And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's talk about the economy right now. Live picture there at the White House. Well, the Wall Street Journal puts it this way, that President Trump's ever-swerving tariff regime has taken more sharp turns this week. That's how they're characterizing it. Well, on July 7th, yesterday, his administration pushed back some of its most punishing duties by another 3 weeks to August, following a 90-day delay. A day later, Trump said the U.S. will impose 50% tariffs on copper, as well as 200% tariffs on pharmaceuticals. Fox Business's Edward Lawrence has it that Trump announced tariffs on imported copper will be 50% coming into the U.S. He says additional protectionary tariffs will be added on pharmaceuticals and semiconductors soon. So we're seeing literally industry-specific tariffs about to go into effect now that this 90-day pause will come to an end tomorrow, though for some, that pause has been extended to August the 1st. President Trump also posting on Truth Social this today, as you can see, from the Trump War Room, saying, "We will be releasing a minimum of 7 countries having to do with trade tomorrow morning, with an additional number of countries being released in the afternoon." He says, "Thank you for your attention to this matter." So yet another release, I believe, in the form of letters, about 7 countries getting letters sent. He says having to do with trade tomorrow morning, saying an additional number of countries will be released in the afternoon here. So in the meantime, though, Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy has all on this and more. Let's listen.
The turbulence around the White House's trade policy not going anywhere for now. In April, President Trump set a July 9th deadline for countries to negotiate new deals with the United States. Now the president is extending his plan for reciprocal tariffs through the end of the month.
They didn't make a change. A clarification, maybe. No, August 1st they pay. And everybody pays.
The shift comes less than 24 hours after the president initially referred to the new August 1st deadline as flexible. 2 of the U.S.'s biggest trading partners, Japan and South Korea, hit with 25% tariff hikes. A dozen other countries also saw their rates go up, Trump warning them not to retaliate or those rates could go even higher.
I could have been much harsher. I don't want to do that. We want to have relationships, but in every case, they treated us far worse than I'm treating them. I'm treating them very good.
The uncertainty also impacting businesses here at home who are still unsure of how to plan for the months ahead. Despite the trade war now ongoing for months, inflation has been relatively steady, a sign the White House says means its strategy is working.
We have flexibility about who we can buy from, where we can choose to import from, or to make things domestically ourselves instead. And that gives us the leverage to create a situation in which other people have to ultimately bear the burden of these tariffs.
In April, the president's team promised 90 trade deals in 90 days, but so far just 2 trade agreements have been agreed to, with the UK and Vietnam. At the White House, Peter Doocy, Fox News.
Peter, thanks so much. Let's bring into the conversation right now our friend there at the American Institute of Economic Research, Dr. Peter Earle. He joins me. Peter, thanks for being with us here. Okay, so that was a fast 90 days, July 9th. Yeah. Tomorrow, 90 days is up. Well, today, President Trump denied, though, changing the date for the tariff deadline to August 1st, saying in that cabinet meeting, you heard him there in that report from Peter Doocy, that was always the date, though the executive order he signed yesterday, moving the deadline from July 9th to August 1st, that was an executive order he signed. So the deadline was moving, the pause is extended. Do I have that right?
I think so. I mean, that's my understanding of it. I mean, you can describe this as calculated brinksmanship, where tariff threats have become pretty a central tool of the administration's economic foreign policy. Not even yet as generators of revenue, but for political and strategic leverage. So they're moving them around a lot. I think the question that a lot of us have, it's a question I have, is why haven't more nations come forward to negotiate? And I mean, there's a couple of possible explanations. One is maybe they don't think there's an advantage to it. Maybe they think that Trump is now in a place where he's going to change dates and move things around. And maybe some others think that if they can get to the back of the line, maybe if prices begin to rise because of tariffs, they can sort of outlast consumers who won't like it, and Trump will go back on and release some of those tariffs. So it's kind of hard to figure out why we haven't had more come forward to make deals, but it's a very, very fluid situation, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, Peter, I want to follow up on that. That was a question I was asking myself.
Hmm.
Why haven't more countries come forward? Why are we only talking about two deals that have been inked in these 90 days between the UK and between Vietnam here? Is it because I'm trying to get into the psyche of some of these countries, almost
Sure.
100 of them, is that they will get more time eventually, that these delays will be paused or extended, and that they have unlimited time to work this out? Do you think that's what they're thinking?
I don't think they have unlimited time, but they may. Again, they may think that there's no advantage in running, to get a deal done because maybe they looked at the first two deals that were done. You mentioned Vietnam and the UK, and maybe they don't think that those are very great deals. So why would they rush to do that? Another possible explanation is that they may want to look. They may not want to look overly conciliatory or weak. They may want to do that, and also, we have to remember that at the same time as this is going on, many nations, Trump has been paying a lot of attention to the BRICS, the expanded BRICS nations lately. Many of them are trying to make bilateral and multilateral deals of their own. So maybe some of them are saying, if I can just put off, this for a month or two, I might get a better deal or get at least, something akin to a good deal, with a group of other countries.
Yeah, of course, each and every one of these countries, they have their domestic politics that they have to contend with. They have
Sure.
constituencies that they have to cater to. You mentioned
Yep.
BRICS, though. Trump yesterday threatened an additional 10% levy on countries siding with BRICS. Those are not countries within that alliance, but those that side with it, or
Right.
the countries within the alliance themselves, like Brazil, Russia, India, and China. So I thought that was interesting. Let's get country specific here. Trump's going after South Korea and Japan. Why those two? They're our
South
allies.
Korea's Yeah, South Korea is a little bit of a mystery, but Japan, Japan is a very export dependent country. It's a giant island. Most of their trade relies on exports, and I have a feeling that it's sort of a proof of purpose, right? If they can make a deal with Japan, I think they feel they can make deals with other countries, and it's a country that especially for someone Trump's age, and I mean, you know. I was a teenager at the time, but I mean, I remember this view in the 80s that Japan was going to take over the world. And I wonder if there isn't still a little bit of that, going on in some of these policies where it's viewed that, Japan is still this competitor, certainly not on par with China, but I have a feeling that a lot of it has to do with trying to make our relationships in the Pacific Rim, Australia, South Korea, all that, not only military ones, but also economic ones. And part of that Trump would see as, making sure that we have a trade surplus with them.
Yeah, I just lastly on South Korea and Japan, rates set in the letters that have gone out there so far have ranged from 25% to 40%. They're generally in line with the original reciprocal rates set out in April. Both Japan and South Korea, according to the Wall Street Journal. To your point, they together export millions of cars to the United States, face 25% tariffs, according to the letters there. And we know, according to the president, more letters to countries are going out tomorrow morning. We'll have to see who's included in those here. What about for the market here stateside, the uncertainty around that? That's kind of the buzzword around the president's tariff regime. If every country has a different tariff rate and yet all of them have the same kind of baseline rate too here, how does the market respond to all of that?
I mean, one of the things that I noted was early this morning we got the National Bureau of Independent Business report that comes out every month, and small business people, and we have to remember that small businesses are the cauldron of job creation in the U.S. Small business people have said that they were reluctant to hire more, and they're reluctant to rebuild inventories as long as tax and tariff policies weren't clear. Now, the tax issue was made clear by the passage of the big beautiful bill last week, but the tariff issue is still out there. So I mean, it's hanging over not just financial markets like stocks and bonds, but it's also just hanging over the general economy. Small companies not only create a lot of the jobs in the U.S., but also they're big importers. A lot of their imports come from overseas. And so changing those prices is going to change their ability to do business. And so, that's going to put, I think, something of a lid on the ability to create jobs, as long as it's an unclear situation.
Yeah, and just lastly, Peter, the thrust of our conversations since April the 2nd have been, well, how is this going to impact the inflationary atmosphere in the U.S. economy with the levying of so many of these tariffs here. And you even heard it said in the last Fed meeting a couple of weeks ago. Jerome Powell said they're still being very cautious. That's why they haven't cut rates, because they don't know where the tariff regime is going vis-a-vis inflation. Today, though, the White House is touting this report from the Council on Economic Advisors. It's basically an internal report there within the executive branch. And the Trump White House says this new report found that the prices of imported goods have fallen this year and have dipped faster than overall goods prices since February. They cite the PCE report. We can get into that. They say overall goods prices in the PCE index jumped by 0.4% from December through May, which corresponds to a 1% annualized rate, according to the CEA report. They say, meanwhile, the imported component of PCE goods prices dropped by 0.1% during that same time period. I know that's a lot of econ mumbo-jumbo. We'll get into it. They're essentially touting the fact that inflation has not gone up because of tariffs. Is that what you've seen?
So two things. First, we haven't seen the full imposition of tariffs, certainly not on the scale, that they were introduced on April 2nd. If those numbers were put in place, it's hard to imagine we wouldn't see an immediate effect in prices here in the U.S. But also, I saw a report earlier today from DataWeaver that said that prices in Chinese goods have risen 2.6% over the last 4 months. So I think it matters. What matters is what data you're looking at, over what time period. Certainly, there are some groups of goods and services you could look at where prices might have fallen. It's going to be a question of what you're looking at. About the Fed, though, the Fed is actually, their job is to look not at supply side issues, but demand side issues. So the Fed is supposed to look past things like tariffs and all that sort of thing. If the Fed says that they're withholding, lowering rates because they want to see what happens with tariffs, I suspect that it has less to do with tariffs than what they think will happen if we have, sort of an economic slowdown because of tariffs, because that would be a demand side issue. But actually tariffs themselves, at least in theory, what happens is you have a single move of prices up and then the markets adjust around them. But I mean, again, the Fed's independence has been assailed lately. They might also be trying to prove a point politically, but they should not be, prices rising because of tariffs are not something that the Fed should be responding to necessarily.
All right, Peter Earl, we're going to have to leave it at that. Peter, always good to see you. I'm sure we'll be talking soon. Have a good night.
Have a good night.